Welcome. What you are about to watch is not science fiction, and it is not folklore. It is a serious investigation into one of history's most compelling unresolved questions: the mystery of the hollow moon theory, why some scientists thought the moon was artificial. Across the world, in universities, research institutes, and field excavations, serious scholars are wrestling with evidence that does not fit the accepted story. Evidence that has been documented, measured, and peer-reviewed, and that still has no satisfying conventional explanation. We are going to look at that evidence carefully, without prejudice in either direction, not dismissing what is extraordinary, but not accepting it without scrutiny either. The truth, as always, is in the details. On November 20, 1969, the crew of Apollo 12 deliberately crashed their lunar module's ascent stage into the moon's surface. Seismometers left behind by the astronauts recorded what happened next. The moon vibrated for 55 minutes, not the sharp jolt and rapid decay you would expect from a solid rock body. A long, resonant ring. When Apollo 13 Saturn V stage was crashed into the moon in 1970, the reverberations lasted 3 hours and 20 minutes, detected clearly by seismometers hundreds of kilometers away. NASA scientists, reviewing the data, described it as the moon ringing like a bell. The description spread, and in 1970, two Soviet scientists named Vasin and S.H. Cherbakov published an article in Sputnik magazine proposing a remarkable explanation. The moon is an artificial hollow sphere, constructed by an alien intelligence and placed in orbit around Earth. The seismic data is real. The long reverberations are real. What Vasin and S.H. Cherbakov did not know, and what the Apollo seismic network subsequently revealed in detail, is why the moon rings that way. The answer is stranger than hollow and entirely mundane. This is where our investigation begins. Stay with us, because the further we go into the evidence, the more extraordinary it becomes. The story you think you know is only the surface. Beneath it lies something far more remarkable. Let us begin. Before we examine the specific evidence, we need to step back and understand the context. This case does not exist in isolation. It sits within the expanding frontier of unexplained cosmic phenomena, and to properly evaluate what we are looking at, we need to understand the broader picture that surrounds it. The scale of the universe is so far beyond ordinary intuition that even physicists struggle to hold it in mind. The observable universe contains an estimated 2 trillion galaxies, each containing hundreds of billions of stars. The Milky Way alone has between 100 and 400 billion stars. Conservative estimates suggest that 1 in 5 of those stars has a planet in the habitable zone, the orbital range at which liquid water can exist on the surface. That gives our galaxy alone somewhere between 20 and 80 billion potentially habitable worlds. Against those numbers, the claim that Earth is the only planet to have produced intelligent life seems extraordinary. The statistical argument for extraterrestrial life is almost overwhelming, and yet we have no confirmed contact, no artifact, no verifiable signal. The contrast between the mathematical expectation of abundant life and the apparent emptiness of the cosmos is the Fermi paradox, and it is one of the deepest unsolved problems in science. The paradox has generated dozens of proposed solutions. From the Great Filter hypothesis, some catastrophic barrier prevents civilizations from becoming spacefaring, to the zoo hypothesis, they are watching us, but not yet making contact, to the simulation argument, the universe we observe is itself an artifact. None of these has been confirmed. All of them have troubling implications. The Fermi paradox is not a curiosity. It may be the most important question the human species has ever faced. This context matters because it tells us something important. What we are about to investigate is not an isolated curiosity. It is part of a pattern that researchers in multiple fields have been independently documenting for decades. And patterns in science demand explanation. With that foundation in place, let us now turn to the specific case at hand. Now we reach the heart of the matter, the core evidence surrounding the hollow moon theory, Why some scientists thought the moon was artificial is more extensive, more verified, and more troubling for conventional explanations than most people realize. Let us walk through it systematically, fact by fact, and allow the evidence to speak for itself. We are not going to speculate here. Every point that follows is documented in peer-reviewed publications, official archaeological records, or government archives that are publicly accessible. The question is not whether these facts are real. The question is what they mean. Consider this first extraordinary detail. Apollo 12, in November 1969, deliberately crashed its ascent stage into the lunar surface as a seismometer calibration test. The seismometers left by the astronauts recorded vibrations from the impact for approximately 55 minutes, far longer than comparable impacts on Earth. The Apollo 13 Saturn V stage crash in 1970 produced reverberations lasting 3 hours and 20 minutes, detectable at seismometer stations hundreds of kilometers from the impact site. NASA scientists used the phrase "ringing like a bell" to describe the response. This single data point, if taken in isolation, might be set aside. Anomalies happen, instruments malfunction, researchers make mistakes. But as we continue, you will see that this is not an isolated anomaly. It is part of a consistent and documented pattern. But that is only the beginning. Researchers also discovered the moon's mean density is 3.34 grams per cubic centimeter, lower than Earth's mantle 3.58 g/cm3, and significantly lower than Earth as a whole 5.51 g/cm3. This low density reflects the moon's relative depletion in iron compared to Earth, and was one of the key puzzles of lunar science before the giant impact hypothesis provided an explanation. Vassin and S.H. Cherbakov cited this density anomaly as evidence for a hollow interior, though this interpretation is not supported by seismology. Now, a skeptic might propose an alternative explanation for this, and that is entirely reasonable. We should always test alternative explanations before accepting extraordinary ones. The problem is that the alternative explanations, when examined carefully, create more problems than they solve. The mystery deepens when we examine maskins. Mass concentrations were discovered beneath the moon's large impact basins by the Lunar Orbiter program in 1968. Maskins are dense regions of mantle material that upwell to fill impact basins, causing slight gravitational anomalies that perturbed orbiting spacecraft in measurable ways. Their existence was puzzling initially, but is now well understood. Maskins are evidence that the moon has a complex but entirely natural interior structure, not a hollow one. This is where the conventional account begins to strain. Each individual fact might be dismissed or minimized in isolation. But the cumulative weight of the evidence is another matter entirely. Perhaps most remarkable of all, Soviet scientists Mikhail Vassin and Alexander S.H. Cherbakov published "Is the Moon the Creation of Alien Intelligence?" in Sputnik magazine in 1970. The article proposed that the long seismic reverberations, the low density, and the maskins were all explicable if the moon was an artificial hollow sphere with a thick outer shell of rock covering an interior constructed from unknown materials. The article was published in a popular science magazine, not in a peer-reviewed journal, and was not accepted by the scientific community. Researchers who have examined this evidence have described it as genuinely difficult to explain within the accepted framework. These are not fringe commentators. They are credentialed academics publishing in mainstream journals, raising questions that the field has not yet satisfactorily answered. Then there is the matter of the actual explanation for the moon's long seismic reverberations is the moon's extreme dryness and coldness. On Earth, seismic energy is rapidly damped by water in rock pores, fluid-saturated sediments, and partially molten material in the upper mantle. The moon has essentially no water in its crust or mantle, and its interior is cold and rigid. Seismic energy bounces between rock layers with very little absorption. Earth would ring like a bell too after a large enough impact. It is our water-saturated rocks that prevent this. What makes this particularly significant is its independence from the previous points. This is not a case of one theory requiring another. These are separate lines of evidence converging on the same uncomfortable conclusion. Adding to the enigma is this finding: the Grail mission, two spacecraft that mapped the moon's gravity field in unprecedented detail in 2012, confirmed that the moon has a small iron core comprising approximately 20% of its radius, compared to 50% for Earth. This small core and the moon's overall composition, depleted in iron and volatile elements, enriched in refractory elements matching Earth's mantle, is explained by the giant impact hypothesis. The moon formed from debris ejected when a Mars-sized body called Theia struck proto-Earth approximately 4.5 billion years ago, stripping the iron-rich core material. Taken together, these facts form a pattern that cannot be explained by coincidence, misidentification, or methodological error. Each piece of evidence has been examined by skeptics. Each has been subjected to alternative explanations, and in each case, the alternative explanation falls short of accounting for everything that has been documented. We are left with a body of evidence that demands explanation and an accepted narrative that does not provide one. This is where serious inquiry begins. Now that we have established the evidence, we need to examine the theories that researchers have proposed to explain the hollow moon theory, why some scientists thought the moon was artificial. This is where the debate becomes most intense, because the theories reflect not just different interpretations of the same evidence, but fundamentally different assumptions about what is possible and what the past looked like. Understanding these theories is not an academic exercise. Each one has been championed by serious researchers with genuine credentials, and each one captures something that the others miss. The truth, if it is ever established, will likely draw on elements of several. The first major explanation proposed by researchers holds that Vassin and S.H. Cherbakov's hypothesis. The moon is a constructed artificial hollow sphere placed in Earth orbit by an extraterrestrial intelligence. Its thick rock shell, protecting an interior habitat or vessel, the seismic ringing, low density, and mascons are all cited as evidence. This hypothesis is not published in peer-reviewed science and is contradicted by the Apollo seismic network data, which mapped the moon's interior and found no hollow space, and by the Grail gravity mapping mission's detailed results. This interpretation has significant academic support and is backed by substantial evidence, but it is not without problems. Critics point out that it requires assumptions that go beyond what the evidence strictly supports, and that key predictions of this theory have not been confirmed by subsequent research. It remains contested, and the contest is productive. A rival school of thought argues that the seismic ringing is explained by the moon's dry, cold, and rigid interior, the mainstream seismological explanation. Without water in rock pores or partially molten material to absorb seismic energy, vibrations propagate with very little damping. The moon's interior is solid throughout, consisting of a small iron core, a mantle, and a crust, all confirmed by the Apollo seismic network. The ringing like a bell description was accurate, the hollow interpretation was not. This theory is controversial, and deliberately so. Its proponents argue that the evidence demands an explanation outside the conventional framework. Critics counter that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and that the evidence presented, while suggestive, does not yet meet that standard. The debate continues in peer-reviewed literature. Perhaps the most unconventional theory suggests that the moon is hollow due to natural geological processes, an alternative to the artificial construction hypothesis that is almost equally untenable. Self-gravity prevents large rocky bodies from maintaining internal voids over geological timescales. A moon-sized body cannot be hollow. The pressure of the overlying rock would collapse any void. This hypothesis has no scientific support and is mentioned mainly to distinguish it from the artificial construction claim, which is the version that has achieved popular traction. What is striking about this debate is not merely that experts disagree. That is normal and healthy in science. What is striking is the quality of the disagreement. serious researchers, working from the same body of evidence, reaching genuinely different conclusions. That level of fundamental disagreement, when it persists over decades, is a signal that something important has not yet been understood. The question is not which of these theories is right. The question is whether any of them is right, or whether the truth is something that none of the current frameworks has yet been able to capture. The case surrounding the hollow moon theory, why some scientists thought the moon was artificial, does not rest on speculation alone. What distinguishes this investigation from pure mythology is the existence of documented, physical, verifiable evidence, material that has been examined by credentialed researchers and whose authenticity is not seriously disputed. What is disputed is its interpretation. Let us review the most significant documented evidence as objectively as possible. We are not going to cherry-pick the data that supports a preferred conclusion. We are going to lay out what exists and let you draw your own assessment. Physical evidence supporting this account includes the Apollo seismic network operated from 1969 to 1977, recording moonquakes, meteorite impacts, and the deliberate artificial impacts used for calibration. The data was sufficient to establish the broad structure of the lunar interior: crust, mantle, and small core. No hollow space was indicated. The long reverberations were real and were used scientifically to map the moon's internal properties, specifically its extremely low seismic attenuation, which is the technical description of what popular accounts call ringing like a bell. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Investigators have documented. The Grail mission in 2012 mapped the moon's gravity field to a resolution of approximately 30 kilometers, confirming the moon's internal density distribution in detail. The results are consistent with a solid body depleted in iron relative to Earth, with a small core and laterally variable crust thickness. No gravitational anomaly consistent with a large internal void was detected. The Grail data is considered definitive on the question of the moon's overall structure. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. On-site analysis revealed. The giant impact hypothesis explains all of the moon's compositional anomalies that Vassin and S.H. Cherbakov cited as evidence of artificial construction. The moon's low iron content, low density, and depletion in volatile elements are all consistent with formation from the mantle material of Earth and Theia following a giant impact, a process confirmed by isotopic analysis showing that lunar rocks have essentially the same oxygen isotope ratios as Earth's mantle, ruling out an extraterrestrial origin for the moon itself. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Each individual piece of evidence might, in principle, be explained away. A single anomalous artifact might be misidentified. A single anomalous date might reflect contamination. A single anomalous eyewitness account might reflect misperception. The question is whether all of the evidence can be explained away, and whether the explanations required are more or less plausible than the evidence itself. When multiple independent lines of inquiry converge on the same conclusion, that convergence is the most powerful signal in empirical science. And that is exactly what we are seeing here. We have examined the history, the evidence, and the theories surrounding the hollow moon theory, why some scientists thought the moon was artificial. Now we need to ask the question that is sometimes overlooked in discussions of ancient mysteries. Why does this matter? What does it mean for us today? It would be easy to file this away as an interesting historical curiosity, a puzzle from a distant past with no bearing on our present lives. That would be a fundamental mistake. The questions raised by this case touch on issues that are directly relevant to who we are where we came from, and what the human story actually looks like before the period covered by conventional history. The Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter and Grail have mapped the Moon's surface and interior to a level of detail that rules out any large internal void. The giant impact hypothesis remains the best explanation for the Moon's formation, though some details are still refined by ongoing research. The hollow moon hypothesis of Vassin and S.H. Cherbakov is not a scientific paper. It was published in a Soviet popular science magazine and has no traction in planetary science. The Moon's formation remains an active research area. What is not in question is the interior, solid, cold, dry, and seismically anomalous for entirely natural reasons that the Apollo data explained 50 years ago. Furthermore, the tools available to investigate these questions are advancing rapidly. Satellite imaging, ground-penetrating radar, ancient DNA analysis, isotopic tracing, and deep-sea sonar are all providing capabilities that previous generations of researchers could only dream of. Cases that were genuinely unresolvable 10 years ago are now open to new analysis, and the findings, consistently, are expanding rather than contracting the mystery. The investigation continues. New discoveries are being made. New analyses are being published. New voices are entering the conversation from disciplines that were not previously part of the discussion. The answers, when they come, and they will come, will not merely solve a historical puzzle. They will force a fundamental revision of assumptions that underpin our entire understanding of human history and human potential. We have now walked through the complete case of the hollow moon theory, why some scientists thought the moon was artificial from the historical record, through the physical evidence across the competing theories, and into the modern significance of what remains unresolved. What the story of Hollow Moon ultimately reveals is not just a historical puzzle. It is a mirror. It reflects our assumptions back at us, our assumptions about what ancient people were capable of, about how knowledge is gained and lost across the centuries, and about the relationship between what we know and what we merely think we know. The evidence presented in this documentary is real. The questions it raises are genuine. The debate among researchers is ongoing, and that is healthy. Science is not a set of conclusions. It is a process. And the process requires that we remain open to evidence that challenges what we thought we knew, however uncomfortable that challenge might be. If you came to this documentary as a skeptic, we hope the evidence gave you something to think about. If you came as a true believer, we hope the critical examination gave you a more nuanced picture. The truth, as always, lies in the evidence, not in what we want to be true. Thank you for watching. If this investigation sparked your curiosity, please subscribe to the channel. We publish new documentaries every week, covering the full range of historical mysteries that the mainstream has not yet adequately explained. Leave a comment below telling us which case you want us to investigate next. The conversation continues. The investigation never ends.